Thank you, everyone. I'd like to call to order the meeting of June 28th, 2021 of the Faribault Public Schools School Board, the business meeting. With that, we'll move to item 2 on our agenda. We welcome all of you who are seated here in person and those who are watching online on YouTube. And calling the meeting to the order, I'll ask Ms. Clerk Treadway, do you have a determination of a quorum?
We do have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And at this time, if everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A couple of changes in our agenda, or for everyone to note, is what was on board book here. First of all, it was announced that our treasurer, Courtney Cavalier, would be located in Massachusetts in a public location. She's unable to do that, so and I do not know, but she will not be a participant in the meeting. She would be listening, so that is not required. Also on board book agenda, there was, because Courtney was to be online, we had each action item to be a roll call item. That will no longer be, since she is not part of the vote. So all votes will be a voice or choose by chair if it is a roll call or not. So with that, I'll move on to item 4, the approval of the agenda, which is an action item. So could I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud, for the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll move to item 5, community comment. Those who would like to make a comment have emailed Ms. Zavarol and are on our list. So all comments will conform to School Board Policy 206. So at this time, I believe Mr. Steinkamp, if you would like to come forward. And again, for the record, if you would state your name and then your message. And Ms. Treadway will be the timer, if you would. So and we'll go from there. Thank you, Mr. Steinkamp.
Okay, good evening. I'm Roger Steinkamp, and I'd like to comment on the tropes about the social studies standards that are ultimately poisoning the discussion of how we achieve a diverse, equitable, and inclusive democracy. I'm summarizing in a few points because of the time, but there's 22 anchor standards with corresponding benchmarks, and they can all be reviewed by Googling the Department of Education website. And I suspect many of you have already done that and are well aware of it, but I beg your indulgence for those of us who haven't. So let's be clear what we're talking about. Social studies empowers learners to become inquisitive, informed, and engaged members of society who use critical thinking, inquiry, and literacy to prepare for college, careers, and civic life. And the standards are reviewed on a 10-year cycle. The Standard Review Committee was formed last July and met for the first time in September of 2020. And the committee has to include parents, licensed teachers, licensed school administrators, school board members, post-secondary institution faculty teaching these core subjects, and business and community members. And anyone can apply, and the process is open and transparent. The role of the committee is limited to making recommendations, not decisions. The Education Commissioner has final approval of drafts, but the curriculum and how standards and proposed benchmark is demonstrate ways members of a community participate in civic life of their community and explain why participation is important. By the time they get to grade 9, a benchmark is evaluate various sources of information and forms of political persuasion for validity, accuracy, ideology, emotional appeals, bias, and prejudice. Seems like in this day of social media, it's pretty important. And so it seems reasonable to me. I don't see any mention of CRT advocating hatred towards cops, idolizing queer and transgender figures. There's nothing about indoctrinating students with beliefs. And the key words used are identify, explain, and describe. And that sort of inquiry leads to understanding. So I just say, check out the tropes, and if they're based on hearsay or plain fiction, and let's stick to the task at hand, embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion in our social studies standards.
Thank you. Yes, please. Sure. A little distracting, but no, fine. I believe next we have Mr. Kath signed up. So again, for the record, state your name.
My name is Travis William Kath, and I am from Faribault. I just kind of have some notes here that I've kind of lined out today about what I'd like to speak about. So I was watching the school board meeting from a couple months ago, and I couldn't help, there was a group of people here talking about critical race theory. So I thought I would do some research on critical race theory, and this is what I found. So we've heard that critical race theory is racist. So history is racist. Critical race theory is an academic study mostly taught in college law classes. There is no children in elementary schools being taught critical race theory. It hasn't happened. Nobody can prove that that's happened. What critical race theory is it's a broad study with resources, papers, articles that have been written. But when you ask these people who are so worried about critical race theory, they cannot cite a paper, they cannot cite a source. They have nothing to say in the actual literature. They have no references, no quotes, nothing. So how did we get here? More people started looking into systemic racism after George Floyd was killed. People started wondering, how did we get here? How has this come to be as our society? Why is Minneapolis burning? They wanted to learn the actual history of how we got here. Well, people were shocked to find out that we've been lied to. The real history of America has not been taught. I mean, just anecdotally, I was talking to Father Henry earlier today. We were both discussing this, and we both had never heard of the Tulsa race riots up until a couple years ago. I mean, those are things that should be taught in school. Those are important things that we need to learn about if we're going to look at ourselves introspectively. So what would people do with this new knowledge? They would vote. And now you see what the two biggest issues for the right are. They're voting fraud and critical race theory. Two things that do not exist the way they want you to believe that they do. So they attack voting rights. They find scary buzzwords like critical race theory. It's no longer about history. It's that racist critical race theory. People are being lied to. Systemic racism is real. It doesn't make you racist for benefiting from that system. Nobody is saying that. People are being riled up by a machine that wants to make this personal. What is more personal than your children? It's funny because these people are the same people who would be used as a case study for critical race theory in a college class. How race can be exploited to divide us, the people, for the gains of others. It's like saying you're too violent, and that person says they don't have a problem with violence, and then they punch you in the face. So I ask you, the school board, don't take the bait. Don't ignore it. These people are lying. Just don't take the bait. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you sign the form? Thank you. Okay. And Ms. Zavarol, no one else contacted you at to this point? Okay. So with that, we'll move on to item 6, the recognitions, awards, and presentations. And 6A is All-State Orchestra. And Mr. Steichen, if you'd like to come up and present, please.
Okay, so this is the fun stuff. So despite a very challenging year for all of our extracurricular teams and clubs, our students and coaches accomplished some awesome things. And we've just got the latest batch of them here tonight, and we're going to start with All-State Orchestra and Michael Sloan to talk a little bit about that.
Good evening. I'm Michael Sloan. This is Abby Bryan, and she is the violinist. And just a pleasure to be here. Thank you, school board, for hearing me and listening to us. Abby prepared quite a bit for this endeavor to get into All-State Orchestra, and I have another person sitting behind me, Henry Schoenbaum, also made All-State as an alternate, but Abby made it this year as a select student into the orchestra. And this is, if you're not sure what that is, this is like the Pro Bowl of orchestra, where all-star game, where all the best in the state. We're talking thousands of students that do this audition, and they select, I think it's about 100 students for orchestra, about 500 total in band, orchestra, and choir. But to get into this is not easy. You have to do some very difficult scales, prepare a solo that's quite intricate, and then you put together a few rehearsals that are very quick moving and long and tedious rehearsals. I think it's up in Duluth this year. And then you put on a concert, and it's phenomenal. If you've never heard them play, you should really just tune into even the YouTube link of it. It's excellent. And and I just wanted to say just a couple things about Abby too. Her character in class, both these two, their character in class is one of humility and caring about other students, willing to go and help those younger students that don't know exactly what they're doing, or perhaps are just started on their instrument. Go out there, show them what to do with kindness, and just a great model for the younger students. So really proud of her, and proud of Henry too, and their leadership in our class. We have about 60 students in the high school orchestra, which is a nice group. There's 2 orchestras. It's growing, so that's a good sign. Thank you, board, for not cutting the orchestra this year. Really appreciate that. Not so much for my job, but for the students. I mean, it's really it's an important place for a lot of them. Some of them, that's their favorite place to be during the day, and so it's really a special thing. Leave it at that. Congratulate Abby. Did you want to say anything?
Board members, do you have any board members wish to, besides say congratulations and awesome, so.
Hey, what we've done,
I saw you carried your violin case in.
She did. She was going to play a short piece, but I realized our time was limited, so I said,
Great.
you have to come hear her play.
And I believe All-State Recognition deserves some recognition as well. Item 6B is the Gold Seal and World Language Proficiency Certificate. And again, Mr. Steichen.
Yeah, we have 5 students who've earned proficiency certificates for seals of biliteracy, and Sam Oak's going to talk about that. You guys can come on up, those of you who are here.
and if the parents want to come on the side to take pictures, you can come up here too and stand on the side. So feel free to come up.
So the Minnesota Bilingual and Multilingual Seals were legislated in the LEAPS Act in 2014. Minnesota public school districts, charter schools, and non-public schools may award Minnesota Bilingual and Multilingual Seals to graduating high school students in grades 10, 11, and 12th grade. Students who achieve the bilingual seal get college credit along with recognition of their multilingualism in their language abilities. For students who receive the Platinum Seal, they earn 4 semester college credits. Gold Seals, they earn 3 semesters of college credits, and the World Language Certificates earn 2 semesters of college credits. Also, practitioners in the field say that for students who earn a platinum seal, their multilingualism and their bilingualism are good enough to interpret at the UN level. For people who achieve the gold seal, they have the ability to teach at both the high school and college level in the foreign language field. And for people who earn the world certificate, they are fluent enough in both languages that they can switch freely and interact in the places that require them with no problem at all. It is very important to continue to honor the students who have achieved these seals. This is the first official year that we've done this test outside our world language classes. For one, the seal of biliteracy promotes multilingualism and encourages high achievements for students in the foreign language classes, but also for English language learners, it recognizes that they're coming into our schools, our community, already bilingual or multilingual. And it helps us recognize and see that their multilingualism is an asset to the school and our community and not a deficit. So without further ado, I will hand out the seals to our students who are standing behind me here, and then I'll let you guys take it away. First, I'll start with the World Language Certificate. Bik Doom. Jesus Lopez. Kelly Reyes. And then our gold seal recipients, Denise Rodriguez. And Igla Marquez Gutierrez.
Outstanding. What a good-looking group as well. So, congratulations, and just a wonderful accomplishment.
Yeah, and if I can just real quickly, a big thank you to Sam Oak for organizing this and getting this thing rolling. We've been talking about this for a couple of years now, and certainly congratulations to the students and the parents out there. It's a great accomplishment to know that you've got that bilingual certification, so congratulations, you guys. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing. Before those people leave, I invite you after college, if you go into education, please return to Faribault. We very much want you.
Move on to agenda item 6C, Robotics Recognition. Mr. Steichen.
Yeah, you may have heard, other people may have heard, that we are state champions in robotics. So we'll have the coaches come up and talk a little bit about that.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Matt Barron, the head robotics coach this year. This is Maddie Etzer, one of our senior members of the team, and thank you for having us here tonight. This year was kind of a unique year. Even though it was my first year, I kind of got the rundown from Jason Ebenbrecht and Carl Malika, who've been coaches for 8 years now. And so it was a unique year where we did not have any in-person competitions, and everything we did this year was filmed and sent in as kind of videos and times and everything like that. And so it started off with doing it's a worldwide competition, so it's mostly teams from the United States, but there are teams from Brazil and Germany and other things like that. And we took 30th out of 1,400 teams in that competition, which allowed us to go on to the Minnesota State High School robotics competition, where, again, we had to, I think we spent another week, 4 weeks working on the robot, getting it squared away, and eventually sent our stuff in and got first place. It was very long, and I just want to recognize Jason Engbrecht and Carl Malika, because those guys are amazing. They're very amazing. They're such an asset to this community and the school. Anything, Matt? kids worked awesome too.
Congratulations, state champions. Not too many districts can say that, so congratulations.
Could you describe your robot?
So we originally,
Matt, you want to give Maddie the mic?
originally when we first started the first competition, we had used last year's robots, making some minor improvements. We changed our drive system so the wheels spin 360, so it's easier to control it. And then when we found out we went to state, we took a week off and then spent another week, 2 weeks completely tearing apart a whole entire robot and improving it so it's more accurate and it weighed less so it could drive faster.
How many people on your team?
This year, I think it was 8 kids. Normally, it's 20, 25 in a normal year.
Will this influence what you do in college?
No, I don't think I'm gonna do
You might
anything
want to
related to
consider
this in college.
engineering, my dear. Congratulations. We're
Thank
very
you.
proud of you.
Congratulations. Thank you, coaches. Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.
Congrats.
With that, we'll move to item 7, the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the minutes from May 24th, 2021 and June 14th, 2021, employment, additional assignments and other, and authorization of payments, transfers, and investments account. So could I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Move on to agenda item number 8, 8A. Consider the approval of retirement of Leanne Lichtenberg, 29 years of service. Mr. Sesker, do we want to introduce that?
Yeah, it's just a big thank you to Leanne on behalf of all her dedication and her work for us. She's been a huge asset to the school district, as many of you know, and we just want to thank her for her service.
Okay, thank you. So motion for approval of the retirement of Leanne Lichtenberg.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Any more discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. We'll move on to 8B. Consider approval of retirement Deborah Warnamundi, 41 years of service in the Faribault Public Schools.
You guys probably know Deb. Yeah, everybody knows Deb. She was an outstanding paraprofessional for us and just did great work. So very proud of her and want to congratulate Deb.
Motion for the approval retirement of Deborah Warnamundi.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. Discussion? Discussion?
Don't know what Lincoln's going to be like without Deb there, but we are very grateful for her many years of
That's good.
service.
That's great. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Robichaud.
with the shortages that we're facing in education, we may not get a second on some of these retirements.
So you're saying I have to work for seconds and motions tonight, right? So there we go. So yes, just as a general note, I taught with Leanne at McKinley for quite a number of years, 8, 9 years. Just a real high quality individual, excellent teacher, dedicated to kids in this district as well, and also having my kids and grandkids go through Lincoln. Deb Warnamundi's just been exceptional in her position down there, and like I said, I think virtually everyone in this town knows her just for the number of years that she's been at Lincoln and the number of kids she's had, so thanks once again. Number 9, we have our finance. 9A is the minutes, the May 17th, 2021 report. Mr. Adams, do you wish to come up in case the board has, or Mr. Sesker, is that?
He's
okay?
going to go with the finance stuff.
Yeah, so let's do, looks like you're, Gonna be up here for a while. So again, the 9A is the minutes of the May 17th committee meeting, and we'll go from there. You can roll into 9B, the budget, all the reports, and then the gifts, donations, I'll go through there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bellingham. We'll start off with the monthly counts for May 2021. We ended the month of May at 3,241 ADM, bringing the year-to-date average to 3,346, which left us at approximately 33 ADM under budget for the school year. And we'll review the final budget changes to that here in a moment, a little later in the agenda. Any questions on enrollment before we move forward? Okay, hearing none, I'll move into the comparative financials. All right, moving into the comparative financials, as you know, we have redone this report for you to give you guys a quick way to see where things are happening at a high level, and then we also dig down into the details a little bit. Looking good overall for the year. The thing I really like to point to is that projected revenue and expenditures graphic at the bottom of this first page, where it really shows you month by month for the year based on projections and actuals where we're falling. And as you can see, we're falling right in line with nothing outside of expectations in this point. All right. Page 2, again, financials, looking at the general fund, looking at the revenue categories, and then looking at expenditures by object and expenditures by program series. Again, you can see it looks at actuals, it looks at budgeted over a 3-year period, and again, nothing outside of expectations from what we would expect at this point in the year in the general fund. Page 3, again, our ancillary funds, food service, community service, all the way through our irrevocable trust. Again, looking at that 3-year trend, nothing outside of expectations. 4 and 5 are our dashboards. I'm going to skip over those here, and we'll just get down to our comparative financial report for select general fund expenditure accounts, looking specifically at our HVAC, water, electric, and snow removal. We're excited to see that those should come in well under budget for the year, which just shows us how the weather was this year, and as well as COVID. So it went as best as could be expected in those accounts. And lastly is the comparative financial report for the self-insurance fund. As was noted on the first page, we are sitting revenue over expenditures, and for our first year at this point in the year, that's really exciting to see, considering we went to that this year. Any questions on the financial report?
Dr. Robichaud.
Mr. Chair, I have it's not specific to this report, Adam, but it looks like it's a 2.5 increase for next year from foundation aid. Will you bring forward then a revised revenue budget once that's signed into law?
Yes, once we do the revised budget later in the fiscal year, the timing of the passage of the bill was too close for the submission. Yep. Okay. But yes, we'll bring that in the revised budget.
Okay. And then at 2% the following year. So.
Correct. We will factor that in our financial projections for our multi-year. Correct.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other board member, any questions? Mr. Adams, I truly appreciate the dashboard and all the data you put out with the financial reports for us. It really breaks it down and gives us a comparative analysis. It's really helpful for me being a non-financial person, so thank you so much. I think it's very solid reports, and I appreciate that very much. So,
thank you, Mr. Bellingham.
Let's move on to 9B3, the gifts and donations of Resolution 2122. Is that it's a resolution by the School Board of Independent School District 656 to adopt Resolution 2122, approving acceptance of the following gifts and donations. Tammy L. Nelson, donation of repurposed parts from 2 bases with a value of $20 given to Music Mart to repair the other bases. Rice County, number 2, Rice County Area United Way, a grant donation with a value of $2,600 for Faribault Early Childhood Family Education. And Brian Nelson, donation of $5,000 to be used for scholarships for Project ABLE. Board members, I will entertain a motion for approval of Resolution 21-22.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson, and do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. This is a roll call item, so Ms. Treadway.
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves,
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway, aye. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, board members. We'll move on to item 9C. The items reviewed by the Finance Committee are suggested for board approval. 9C1 is fiscal year 21-22 agreement for vended meals, Discovery School.
Yeah, and these are just basically contracts with the local schools. So if you have questions, feel free to ask Andrew or I.
That's correct. Yep. Okay. So let's have a motion for approval of the agreement for vended meals, Discovery School, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. And discussion? Questions or discussions, Mr. Adams? Straightforward, discussions. Hearing none. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. 9C2, fiscal year 21-22 agreement for vended meals with Cannon Valley STEM School. Let's entertain a motion for that, please. The chair will so move. And need a second? Second. Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. Okay, I have to get in there somehow. I can do that, so. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. 9C3 is fiscal year 21-22 Riverbend Nature Center contract. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. Discussion? I will just say that in looking at for the money that is spent and the number of kids that go out there and our curriculum support is very phenomenal. We're so fortunate to have the Riverbend as part of all this, so thank you so much. So, any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. 9C4, fiscal year 21-22 Riverbend Nature Center Field Biologist class. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And discussion.
This is an exciting opportunity for Faribault High School students. We so appreciate the partnership with Riverbend and the high school's work to make this happen.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. 9C5, 10-year long-term facilities maintenance revenue and expenditure plans. Motion for approval of that 10-year long facilities maintenance review and expenditure plan.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Do we have a second? The chair will second. Okay, so discussion or questions?
I'll just make a comment. The facility committee has reviewed this, and then this is a requirement from the state of Minnesota. They used to have it as a health and safety document.
Okay.
You guys may have remembered that before, but this is the new document that they use for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Zesker. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 9C6 is fiscal year 2021 final budget.
Yeah, while Andrew is getting this ready, I just want to say thank you to both Andrew and Scott for all the work on this. As you know, school finance is incredibly complex. Both the expenditures and the finance. The 3 ESSER funds plus the summer programming fund did not make it any easier on these guys, but they've really done a great job of putting a very solid budget in place for you. So Andrew will be talking about the current fiscal year, 2021 first, and then you guys may want to spend a little bit more time on the 21-22 fiscal year budget as he goes through that. So take it away.
So first off, I would just, because he is new to our team, and I'm not sure how long it's been since the last time you saw him, I would like Scott Gerdes, our controller, to stand, and I just want to recognize him for the hours of work he has put into assisting me in preparing this budget, and I just want to give him massive kudos for all of his assistance in this process. It was long and grueling with COVID and all of that, so thank you, Scott, so much for your hard work. All right. So moving into the 21 final budget, and I apologize, it is behind me, so I will do my best to try and manage both here. I'm going to keep the 21 final budget brief. We did talk about this at the work session, so if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask, but otherwise I will be keeping it fairly brief on 21 so we can spend time on 22.
You put them on these screens or not?
Yeah, I think Casey's trying to figure that out, so.
Oh.
Yep, I see him shaking his head back there.
We've got a very good expert back there. Oh, here we are.
There we go.
Over here. We got this one over here, at least.
Okay, so the big changes for our 21 final budget, as you're aware, we had the CRF funds, we had the CARES Act money, we had the Circle and closed grant awards. So the major change there was the reduction of 36 ADM in our student enrollment, which was about just shy of $300,000 revenue decrease on the general fund. Moving on, oh, there we go. Just to show you briefly the student enrollment, where we projected in the blue, 3379, down 36 to the 3343, and that is based on estimated year-end enrollment. All right, and again, I apologize that this is so small. Hopefully you have that in your packet in front of you. We are looking at unassigned fund balance for the year. Starting fund balance at 11.28%, revenues of 44.7 million, expenditures of 45.2, transferring that, as I reminded you guys early in the year, we had paid some bills before year end, which is what that transfer line is about, ending the year at $6 million in unassigned fund balance, or 10.97%. So you'll notice that our percentage of fund balance declined while our fund balance actually increased. Why is that? Well, that is because the denominator rose as we added federal funds and expenditures, which is a net zero expenditure to the fund balance, right? We have revenue and expenses equal zero. They match each other. But what it did is it increased the denominator, therefore decreasing our fund balance percentage. So I just wanted to give you guys that insight in case you were questioning why it looked like we were going backwards when we're actually going forward.
So if you take away the percents, the fund balance increased.
The fund balance increased. That's what you guys are excited to hear. Other than that, I'm not going to dive into the ancillary schedules. If there's a schedule that you have a question on, please let me know. I'd be happy to illustrate. Otherwise, once you guys approve, I'll dive into 22 and we'll dig into that one in depth.
Do you want to scroll one more, Casey, so we can see the fund balance for food service and the other funds too? You can get that, yeah.
It pages half a page at a time.
Yeah.
There we go. So food service, we budgeted to go ahead in, as well as community service, we're budgeting to go ahead in as well. We were able to react well to COVID this year, and we were able to ensure that we would not go backwards.
Great. So with that, let's have a motion for approval of the fiscal year 2021 final budget.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. And discussion. So any discussion or questions for Mr. Adams? Second request for discussion. And discussion. Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. 9C7, fiscal year 21-22 adopted budget.
All right, fiscal year '22, the process that started back in December. This has been a long journey, and I've been extremely excited to present this to you guys tonight. So you'll notice a few things about our budget book as we're going along. I'm really trying to change the way that we talk about finance in this district and really bring it to telling the story of Faribault instead of it just being a report on here's the numbers and here's the bottom line. Because really nothing better tells the story of Faribault than what we're doing with our finances, what we're doing with our metrics that we use to measure progress in the district. So I'm really trying to take that as we progress forward and be intentional in our board book. So you'll see I added the mission statement to the top of the front page, and then I added a picture of our wonderful principal, Jessica Lewis. She was invited over to Lincoln to listen to kindergartners this year read their book reports and just really celebrate learning in one of the most difficult years. And to see that joy in that little girl's face while she's with Miss Lewis just really got me when I was looking through the pictures, and it just reminds me of why I do this and why I'm here, my why as a school business official. So the next 2 pages we have shows our school board and district administrators, which there shouldn't be any changes there. But on our school administrators page, page 3, you'll see a few new faces, some of which we will approve tonight during the board meeting, and some of which you've approved in a couple of previous meetings. So now we'll move on to all of the things that we've been talking about since December of this past year. Looking at the general fund and looking at our budgetary highlights, we've had these little things called the CARES Act and coronavirus. So I broke down for you the 2 buckets, the ESSER 2.0 and ESSER 3.0, which we spent quite a bit of time on as a team going over, breaking down for you how much revenue we plan to recognize, which also corresponds directly to the expenditures that we will recognize that those revenues will offset. So that gives you a quick total to look at. Looking at our closed grant, we'll continue to receive that for 2 more years at $1.3 million. That's $1.3 million worth of literacy coaches and other supports to our district that help us grow and progress and make teaching and learning better for our kids. Ltfm levy recovery from our 20 adjustment. We all remember the havoc that kind of had on us in our Ltfm, which is the reason we went negative. So having that adjustment back has really helped the budget look better going into next year and recover our Ltfm fund. Compensatory revenue decline. We spent a lot of time talking about that this year, getting those FRP forms, driving that aid from the state. So that is down $446,000 going into next year.
Why is it down? Just you don't have the counts, or what happened?
Multiple pieces. So one is that the product makeup of the free versus reduced students, that shifted. And then the number of received applications went down, even though we spent months and everything short of door-to-door knocking in the middle of COVID. And actually we did do door-to-door knocking, just for the record, to get those. I mean, we pushed as hard as we could on families, and there were just some we couldn't get.
There's also, we declined 130 students, so
Correct.
we didn't have those students. And then we also, the economy picked up quite a bit these last couple of years too, so that had something to do with it too.
Is there any way to encourage parents to submit that paperwork when they register their child?
So we have a big push as part of our online registration. It's part of that. And we will also be we will be including the pandemic electronic benefits, benefit to families, which most families in our district that qualify are receiving at this time. But we'll be using that as well to support the push, again, that you have to re-qualify for your free and reduced status to continue to qualify for the pandemic electronic benefits going into the fall. And we are really hoping that the Fed expands that for fiscal year 21-22 as well, which would, again, help us get families to apply.
Sure, thank you.
All right, another thing that we saw as going into next year is we saw a reduction in our title programming revenue, so that's federal revenue. There's another $111,000, as well as our reduction in ADM projected at $32.31, getting us our final gen ed aid revenue. On the expenditure side, as we all spent a lot of time collaborating on our Phase 1 permanent reductions, our Phase 1 one-time reductions, as well as our ESSER 2.0 Phase 1 budget deficit subsidy, that one-time reduction. So we know going into next school year that that is our fiscal cliff starting next year. So that'll be the first conversation we have come this fall. Okay? Purchase services inflationary increases, my apologies. Total package increases on open contracts. Then our ESSER 2.0 and 3.0 expenditure plans to tie back to the revenue. And then lastly, we're excited about our Bruce Smith Field scoreboard upgrade with the Jackson Estate and that collaboration with the Booster Club as well. All of that should result in an unassigned fund balance projected to be $5.7 million or 10.05% of budgeted expenditures. So that is our assumptions that went into our general fund budget at this time.
And just to note what Jerry had said earlier, the new legislation that just occurred is not part of this.
Right.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Sesker.
Okay, with that, to continue, so let's have a motion for approval of the fiscal year 21-22 adopted budget.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud, and do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. And discussion or further questions to Mr. Adams? Second call for discussion. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, everyone.
Move on to item 10, the Policy Committee, 10A. Consider approval of Policy 304, Superintendent Contract Duties and Evaluation.
You want me
Mr.
to-
Sesker.
Right. Either one of us, we're both water policy. This is just an updated policy. It's taking place of the 304 that you're going to be, or 307 that you're rescinding the next time around.
That's great. So we expand that a little bit.
More comprehensive.
Much
Yes.
more comprehensive.
This was reviewed extensively by the Policy Committee and comes as a recommendation from the Policy Committee. So, motion for approval of Policy 304.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Steves, for the motion, and Ms. Treadway, second. Thank you. Discussion? 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 All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. Item 10B is consider approval to rescind Policy 307. So this, as Mr. Sesker said, this is removing Policy 307, which was picked up in 304 with just a little different language there. So again, gone over by the Policy Committee and recommendation from the Policy Committee. So motion for approval to rescind Policy 307.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Discussion? 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 All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. Item 10C, the following policies are presented for first reading. Policy 524, Internet Acceptable Use and Safety Policy. Policy 533, Wellness, and Policy 802, Disposition of Obsolete Equipment and Material.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Treadway.
I recognize that this is attempting to move forward Policy 524 because I was not a full participant in that last meeting, and because of technology, I might say. And it was not fully available to all of us ahead of time to really give a thorough review. I would like to refer this back to the Policy Committee so that we can look at it comprehensively.
All right.
Yeah, that works. Yeah,
So-
we have till August, so
That's correct.
We're in good shape.
So we're good there. So we will note that Policy 524, this is not the first reading, but will be referred back to the Policy Committee, but it is the first reading, and in your preparation, It was laid out in board book for you of policy 533 on wellness and policy 802 on disposition of obsolete equipment and material. So,
And you're just referring to 524, right?
Correct.
Yep, okay.
that's correct.
Right.
And again, I just want to thank Mrs. Everall for keeping us organized and presenting all these things. It's quite a job, but doing an excellent job, Kathy. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 11, other matters. 11A is consider approval of resolution 2121 designating depositories. And there it is. So with that, I'm just going to briefly introduce, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but briefly introduce, and I think that would be legal enough, would you say, Mr.
Yeah,
Sesker?
it
Okay,
is.
so resolution designating depositories 2021, 21-21. Whereas Minnesota Statute 118A.02 requires that the board designates one or more depositories. Therefore, it be resolved that the following banks are designated depositories for the 2021 calendar year for the accounts and purposes listed. And let's note for the record then the rest of that resolution as presented in board book. Okay. So with that, let's have a motion for approval of resolution 2121.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. And the chair will second. And do we have any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just have one question. It's probably insignificant. I see all the banks in Faribault are listed with the exception of Wells Fargo. Was there a reason why they were excluded?
Which bank?
Wells Fargo.
We moved away from them.
2 years ago, I believe so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Discussion? This is a roll call action item, so Ms. Treadway, please.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves,
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway, aye. John Bellingham.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. 11B is consider approval of 2021-22 concurrent enrollment contract with Vermillion Community College. And Mr. Sesker, please.
Yeah, so this is the class that we share with Peter Jacobson's the instructor, and then the kids that go there are eligible to receive college credit for environmental studies up in Vermillion, up in Ely.
Motion for approval of the concurrent enrollment contract with Vermillion Community College.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Discussion? Discussion? No further discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. 11C, consider approval for dissolution of cooperative sponsorship with Bethlehem Academy for girls soccer, boys soccer, and girls gymnastics. Mr. Badger, if you would come forward, please, for that. Mr. Sesker and Mr. Badger, just a little input. Would you like the board to act independently on each one, or would you like to, all three?
I think act independently on each one,
Thank
if you don't mind.
That's what I thought too. So, Mr. Badger, could you give us, before we have a motion, could you give us a little details on your recommendation for dissolution of the cooperative sponsorship?
Sure. So, as with all of our partnered schools and cooperative sponsorships, we meet annually and have begun to do that more extensively as we've continued to have these conversations around cooperative sponsorships. So Mr. Friesen and I had a meeting earlier this year where we talked about all of our cooperative sponsorships, every sport that we have an agreement with them on, and talked about keeping them or dissolving them based on the participation data that we have, which is based on the procedure that was approved by the Faribault Public School Board. So at the conclusion of that meeting, it was decided that based on our participation numbers, and in these other two sports, their participation numbers or lack thereof, that it would be in the best interest of our school district to recommend dissolution of these cooperative sponsorships. So boys soccer is the first one up, and would you like me just to summarize all three of these together, or would you like to go one by one?
Give us the data with all of them, and if we have a motion when we need to reflect back, that's what we'll do.
Sure. So with boys soccer is one of our fastest growing programs and has been for a very long time. Just in the last 6 years, in 2017, 2018, we had 67 9 through 12 grade students participate in that sport. We took a small dip there, and COVID was related to that in some ways, but we were back up to 64 this last year. And based on our numbers in our youth programs and what we project to return, we expect that number to exceed 70 very soon. In a 5-year span, the last 5 years with the exclusion of this COVID year, and I'll explain COVID in a moment, but we have had 2 student athletes annually participate from BA, and our 60-plus students that participate from the Faribault Public Schools. This last year we had 7 BA students, and that was because, if you remember, football was not offered right away, so there were students that were seeking an activity. So we experienced a rise in a lot of those, our soccer, our girls soccer, a lot of those activities that had students that just didn't have a place to participate, football and volleyball. We believe that the participation numbers will continue to rise, and we feel that it is in our best interest to dissolve the cooperative sponsorship to provide the most opportunities for our students to participate. The next one, girls soccer, very simply, I think, upon graduation from the one student athlete that we have participating in our program right now, 9 through 12 will have no participants from BA in girls soccer. And then the same would be said for gymnastics. Following this last school year, the 2021 school year, we graduated our last participant, and we'll have 0 participants in the 7-12 program from BA.
Okay, so let's take these one at a time. We'll have a motion, and then if there's questions or discussion or questions within the discussion, we can refer that to Mr. Badger. Let's take, because it's listed first here, let's take girls soccer. So a motion for approval of dissolution of a cooperative sponsorship with Bethlehem Academy for girls soccer. Do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. And do we have a second? The chair will second. And discussion. Mr. Olson.
What's the BA's opinion on this? I mean, of these sports here, the next 3 that would be voting on? I mean, they just don't have the kids, or what?
Yeah, they're correct. There are just no participants in those activities from BA. I think if we talk about more activities, which we're not here to do, but I think the participation numbers have been historically low, and at this point for those 2 we just have no participants from our partner schools.
How does that affect our standing within the league if we do have BA? I mean, why not keep these things open just in case some child agrees to soccer or gymnastics?
Yeah, I think, as we explored, resolution of new cooperative sponsorships and dissolution of existing cooperative sponsorships, when there are no participants, we dissolve and we evaluate resolution for new cooperative sponsorship when the need arises. So we know that between a dissolution and a new resolution, many things could happen. And we want to have the opportunity to make a decision that is in our best interest, and the opportunity to present a resolution for new cooperative sponsorship gives us that opportunity to do that, to evaluate our needs, rather than it just be kind of an existing partnership in perpetuity that has no annual assessment, so to speak.
When you say our best interest, you're talking the parents of the Faribault School District.
Correct,
that
yeah.
have students, but what about the parents of BA?
I don't know. I couldn't speak on their behalf. I just work for the Faribault Public Schools.
So, Mr. Badger, if I can ask a question,
Yeah.
this notice of dissolution is a notice of that they have 1 year, right? It's another year, so the cooperative sponsorship would end a year from now.
That's correct. So when we talk about, when Mr. Friesen and I talk about these particular sponsorships, we talked about the kids that are in there now. For example, the kid that will be a senior this next year, it's not in that student's best interest. We don't want to cut them out.
Right.
We want them to give them the opportunity to participate through the end of their senior year, at which point there would be no participants and it would be appropriate for that to dissolve. So those first two are dissolutions that would take place after this next school year, the 21-22 school year.
Right.
In the case of gymnastics, where there are no participants, my recommendation is to dissolve it now, but BA could say no, and that would exist for one more year, in which case it would dissolve.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions?
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Robichaud.
Badger, just in case the BA has a number of students who wish to participate during this year, you or your successor could come and say, I'm recommending rescission of the cooperative agreement and continue with it, so.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's just a very objective process when we look at, which is what we had agreed on. Let's boil it down to participation numbers, and if those suggest that we should keep it or dissolve it, then that's,
So if by chance there should be some students who are interested in one of these three sports, we're not going to exclude them.
Correct.
At least for a year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And from what I recall, that aligns with recommendations from the Minnesota State High School League.
Yeah, that's correct as well. That cooperative sponsorship process really got a makeover, so to speak, this last year, and we don't want these things just to exist. We want them to be put together to provide opportunities where opportunities did not exist. And so when there are no participants, the opportunity doesn't even need to exist. So that's why these ones with no participants get that look.
So to Mr. Robichaud's point, even after next year, if there is high interest at BA, there is no reason that excludes them from approaching the Faribault Public Schools and developing a new cooperative arrangement.
Absolutely, or any other. I mean, we frequently talk about BA because we have the most relationships with them. However, it could be Medford, it could be Northfield, it could be any district that is a member of the Minnesota State High School League. Anybody could approach us, or we could approach anyone at any time and recommend resolution for new cooperative sponsorship.
Any further discussion? Dr. Robichaud.
Mr. Badger, I just want to express my appreciation for you sitting down with BA and bringing their voice to the table as well regarding this motion. And I know you say you work for the Faribault Public Schools, but there are students participating in co-curriculars that are from all schools, and so you are representing them as well. And I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to meet with BA administration to come with this recommendation.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Ed and I have a great relationship, I think, and I value he's a veteran AD and has a lot of years of experience, so for a young guy like me, it was very appreciative to sit down with him and talk.
Any further discussion? Last call for discussion. Questions? Okay, we have a motion for approval of dissolution of the cooperative sponsorship. In the vote, Chair will ask for a roll call. Ms. Treadway.
And just for clarification, this is for girls soccer.
For girls soccer, yes. Thank you.
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Yes.
Cassie Steves,
Nay.
Carolyn Treadway, yes. John Bellingham,
Aye.
the motion passes 3-2.
Next, then we'll move on to, I would like a motion for approval of dissolution of the cooperative sponsorship with Bethlehem Academy for boys soccer.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Have a second? The chair will second. And discussion.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
You said that there's anticipation in the next year or so that participants will expand to 70 boys out for soccer. What number would you anticipate would make it possible for the average kid to be able to play? I mean, 70 is a lot of kids. How many teams do we have?
It's a really good question. We currently play 3 levels of soccer. So we play a varsity, a junior varsity, and a 9A level. I think based on the soccer coach's opinion, we could come up with a number that is most appropriate for that level of soccer. You know, maybe 22 kids at the varsity level and 15 roughly at each other level. So as we expand our numbers, many teams in the Big Nine play a B squad level, which is like a 10th grade level of soccer. And many of the schools in our area that have numbers to support those play those. So in the 2018-19 school year, we sponsored a B level of soccer. And that's very simple. We just book games for that level of soccer and provide that opportunity. So as our numbers continue to increase, we will expand levels to match the level of the participants and then find opponents that have those same levels. The nice thing is that as we grow and add levels, some of those levels become more fragile. So a roster of 15 kids becomes really fragile when 2 get injured and 1 is sick, and that's a tough place to be. But existing in this kind of hybrid space where we can play not a full schedule of B squad games and then go back to play 3 levels when our opponent may not support as many, it gives us the opportunity to consolidate some of those levels and allow those kids to get healthy or come back. Or I just think the Big Nine provides a unique experience with soccer, with some teams having 2 levels, some having 3, and some having 4. So as we increase our participation numbers, there will be many opportunities for those kids to participate on a team that is, developmentally appropriate, and then kind of chronologically appropriate as well.
Further discussion? Last call for discussion or questions. Okay, we have a motion for approval of dissolution of cooperative sponsorship with Bethlehem Academy for boys soccer. And Ms. Treadway, if you would do the roll call, please.
Richard Olson?
No.
Jerry Robichaud?
Yes, can I explain my vote, Mr. Chair?
Can we wait till after the
Yeah,
vote?
it's been too easy an evening for me. I'll after the discussion.
Go ahead, Dr. Robichaud.
I'm voting because it sounds like the door is open for continued sponsorship and cooperative somewhere down the road if BA does have the number of students.
Correct, always, yeah.
Thank you for the
Thank you,
challenge,
Mr.
Dr.
Chair.
Robichaud. Yes, that's good.
Okay. Cassie Steves?
Nay.
Carolyn Treadway, voting the same way Mr. Robichaud is. John Bellingham? Yes. John Bellingham?
Aye.
The motion passes 3-2.
Thank you. And the third one, I would like to entertain a motion for approval of dissolution of cooperative sponsorship with Bethlehem Academy in girls gymnastics. Do I have a motion? I'll make that motion. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. And discussion again. So, Mr. Badger, I think you stated it. There are no participants. The lone participant from Bethlehem Academy graduated this year.
That's correct.
There are no participants in grades 9 through 12 or in the system, so there we are, no participants whatsoever. So,
And there again, that school or any other could approach Faribault Public Schools for a cooperative sponsorship in the future.
That's correct. And I just think it's, important to note that any student who has not officially enrolled in 9th grade for the first time can participate in our programs by simply enrolling with us. So they have that opportunity to participate in our programs if they if they're not a 9th grader yet. So our 7th and 8th grade students, if gymnastics is their thing, or soccer, or football, whatever it is, they do have the opportunity without a cooperative sponsorship to be a student here.
discussion, questions? Last call, discussion or questions?
So
Okay,
I think,
Oh, Ms. Steeves, I'm sorry, thank you.
I think that all of these cooperative agreements benefit our community. They benefit VA, and they benefit our community as a whole, and indirectly Faribault Public Schools. So have voted no on all of them because I don't agree with the dissolution as outlined here.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, again, it's what you've said. I know this is your last days, but again, you're gonna be gone, we're gonna be here. And we have to face all the taxpayers, no matter if their kids go to Faribault or to BA or whatever. I think you said something very important. I think it's very disturbing, is that we're trying to almost steal kids from, like BA. Says, hey, if you want to play sports, you have to enroll into our district. I think that's wrong. So what you said was wrong. I'll state that to you.
Sure.
And that's not what we're here for. Yeah, do we want to get our student count up? And yeah, there's certain members that want to do that. Me, I represent the whole community. So I'll be voting no again.
Any last comments or discussion? Ms. Treadway, if you do a roll call, please.
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Yes.
Cassie Steves,
Nay.
Carolyn Treadway, yes. John Bellingham.
Aye.
The motion passes 3-2. We have an echo here.
Yeah, I think Casey's working on it.
Thank you, Mr. Badger, for the, and we're doing the high school resolutions. I don't know if you need to be here. That's the next thing on our agenda is the,
Thanks,
Yeah.
now we're good.
Okay, all right.
we're good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
So,
And best wishes to you, Mr. Badger.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
so we have item 11D, the Minnesota State High School League renewal, fiscal year 21-22. This is the resolution, if I'm correct, Mr. Sesker, correct? Right?
Yeah, this is a resolution for us to be a member of the State High School League. That's it.
So for the record, I'll just read that opening paragraph and then we'll just reflect the rest of it. So the 2021-22 resolution for membership in the Minnesota State High School League resolved that the governing board of school district number 656, County of Rice, State of Minnesota, delegates the control, supervision, and regulation of interscholastic athletic and fine arts events referred to in Minnesota statutes, section 128C.01, to the Minnesota State High School League, and so hereby certifies to the State Commissioner of Education as provided for by Minnesota statutes. And then we will note for the record that the resolution continues for the rest of the page as, next 2 pages as in the board book. So could we have a motion for approval of resolution for the membership in the Minnesota State High School League?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway, and do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. And discussion.
Mr. Chair, what is the cost for the membership for our district?
Oh, let's see. It's less than last year. I don't have the quote. I'm sorry, Mr. Robichaud. Do you remember what it is, Andrew?
I was just looking myself, Mr. Sesker.
Just further, I remember last year that the State High School League Board unilaterally increased our fees by some 100%. And I'm concerned if that's the same thinking that they may have with our resolution or with our membership now.
They did increase it. They didn't increase it as much as it was last year, but they did increase it significantly from 2 years ago. So if you use, and I don't know if you have the data from 2 years, go ahead. What was the increase?
We're estimating or we're calculating based on their new formula, $7,200.
Yeah, so I think 2 years ago is about $4,500. I have to go back and remember what that was, but it was about $12,000 this past year, which was, like you said, ridiculous, but we were
They
kind
had
of
so
stuck.
much blowback, though.
They did.
I would think that they would have some consultation with school districts.
The other thing that occurred this past year, you may recall, is that the superintendents really pushed to have 2 seats on the State High School League board. And we don't like to micromanage, although this past year really kind of set that off. So we did get 2 seats on the State High School League board. So you do have 2 superintendents that are helping monitor that.
Okay.
So this resolution membership commits us to $7,500?
Say it again, Andrew.
something like that?
7,500? 7,200, yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, who's our rep?
The chair is, I am.
Oh.
I'm the board rep for the
You're the-
high school,
okay.
yes.
And you've had meetings, or they've been virtual?
Virtual.
What's your opinion of the high school league? What,
I think it's a very good organization. I think they do a lot of structuring for all, setting up the eligibility rules, and there's much more than just the contests and things. And we're talking all areas. We're talking fine arts, we're talking not just athletics, so the whole extracurricular experience for kids in our schools. I think they do a really nice job. I think it's well worth the
do
money.
you think athletics, do you think they're going a little rogue or not?
Athletics?
Yeah, I mean,
What-
changes, and it seems like it's,
Yeah, they haven't really changed anything. I mean,
you don't think it, to me, it's just reforming leagues and.
they do that every year.
I
They
know,
re-
but
yeah.
why? That's the, I'm saying is that, why are they?
Some
you know,
school districts will consolidate. I mean, that
yeah,
happened a
it
while
just-
back.
It
And
seems to be changing.
in some
all the
schools will have a
time.
different enrollment, so they try to match up.
I know.
Like for football, they'll match up schools of, there's less liability. There's a lot of different reasons that they evaluate those things. But actually, I would say the State High School League has been really good to Faribault for some of the things that we've gone through over the last 5 years. They've been right in our corner. So,
Mr. Chair, I think another response is State High School League really levels the playing field for all participants. You know, years ago, big school versus small schools. Now it's pretty much a level playing field for all students.
That's correct, Dr. Robichaud, because I think I gotta go back to the 60s or late 60s of, can I recommend a small southwestern town, Laverne,
Yep.
goes to the Williams Arena and defeats Edina.
Yeah.
You know, basketball. So again, when you have your class systems, you're able to compete with the amount of kids that are registered or in your school and in your programs, et cetera. So I think it's a good thing. Yeah, they do, and again, it's much more so than just athletics. The speech, the drama, robotics. I mean, we're talking, so if you're balancing the whole experience of the whole child here as they're able to go through school, I think they do as Todd said, they do a good job of leveling the playing field. They really do. Ms. Deverell, I've forgotten, do we have a motion on this?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Treadway, if you would do the roll call, please.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Cassie Steves,
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway, aye, John Bellingham.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 11E, which is consider approval of mental health coordinator contract. And it's an action item, and Mr. Sesker, I'm gonna ask you to introduce and bring her on up.
come up, Janet. Yeah. So I'll introduce Janet Muth here in front of you. She can introduce and talk and answer any questions that you have, but we are recommending Janet for our mental health coordinator for the 21-22 school year and beyond. So welcome, Janet.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And Janet, would you like just to do a little brief bio or something for the board? You don't have to, but.
Sure, I'll do a brief bio. I'm still, for a few more weeks, employed at Carleton College. I'm the Director of Health Promotion there right now. But prior to that, I've been there for 5 years, and prior to that, I actually worked for 10 years in Faribault and Northfield for Rice County Growing Up Healthy and the Rice County Mental Health Collective. So I am really excited to be able to return to doing community work in Faribault. I have missed it for the last 5 years.
Excellent.
Can
Dr.
you
Robichaud.
talk a little bit about your background and your experiences?
Sure. Yep.
Bring you to this position?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background and training is in public health. I have a master's in public health, and I'm actually in the process of pursuing a doctorate in public health right now. And my emphasis in that public health has been youth development, so protective factors for young people and what helps to make them healthy and successful, and then really specifically thinking about how do we approach mental health from a public health perspective.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I would like to, I was so excited to see Janet's hire on here. I've worked extensively with Janet. I know that if anyone can initiate and carry through with a stellar program. It is Janet Lewis-Muth. So thank you so much. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So to make sure we have her, let's have a motion for approval of the mental health coordinator contract, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud, and do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves, and do we have any more comments, questions, or discussion? No, so all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
11F, consider approval of the ALC coordinator contract. Mr. Sesker.
Yeah, so Cora, if you can come up and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your history here, that would be terrific. So this is Cora. This is our recommendation for our Alternative Learning Center hire, and we are very excited to have Cora.
And I am very excited to be here. So I was here for 7 years. I worked at the ALC, was a science teacher. I worked with Mr. Tim Bourne, so we did some presentations to you, the board at that time, to do some programming. I did 4 years at the Cannon River STEM School. I was the teaching and learning coordinator there, and then I was also the assistant director. And now I am extremely excited to be back where my heart is, and I'm over the moon to be back at the ALC and in this community and serving at Faribault District.
Excellent. So let's have a motion for approval of the ALC coordinator contract.
So moved.
Oh, go ahead. She has it.
Ms. Steves, and do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. And discussion, more questions, discussions?
Population, and are you trying to grow it, or what's the story on that?
My understanding of working with Jamie, we would like to work together and collaborate and grow the program and get it where we feel it can be sustainable and move to the best for our students and providing what we can. I'm working with the new online classes as well, or the online school, so working with Chris as well, and just providing what we can to help students reach that graduation, and also just the supports that they need to put in place for their learning style and their learning needs.
Any further comment, questions?
So I was really excited to see your name. I served in the Faribault Future class a couple of years ago with Cora, and empathetic and kind-hearted and full of grace. So our students are really lucky to have her.
Okay, so no further comments. We have a motion for approval of the ALC coordinator contract. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes. Welcome back, Cora. Thank you. Congratulations. 11H, consider approval, 11G, consider approval of activities director contract. Mr. Sesker.
Yeah, and we're very excited to have Ryan Lukin as our next activities director. And most of you already know who Ryan is, so we're recommending your approval for Ryan as our next activities director.
Mr. Lukin, a little brief if you would. I don't know how or why, but.
Yeah, so this is, let's see here, I've been in Faribault now, I've completed 17 years, so this will be my 18th year in Faribault. I've been at Lincoln Elementary teaching physical education for the last 17 years. So it's a tough school to leave. I really enjoy that school, really love that school, but I'm excited for this new opportunity.
Questions or discussion? Okay, so let's have a motion for approval of the activities director contract.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. And discussion, questions, discussion, questions, discussion. Dr. Robichaud.
Yeah, just a question. How's the transition going to be working with little kids all day to walk around all those big kids?
It's going to be quite the change, actually, yes. I kind of joke around with my kids. I go from having kindergartners that, look up to me to now high schoolers that are looking down on me. So it'll be quite the change, but excited for it.
And I'm sure you'll make a very smooth transition to that.
Thank you, Jerry.
We couldn't be more pleased. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And
It's definitely Lincoln's loss.
that's good. And obviously, Mr. Lukin, you and I go way back to when we coached 7th grade football. You and Mr. Hawkins and I.
That's right.
the ball still was oblong, that was how long ago it was. Yeah, we're very happy and pleased with you in this position, so. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. Congratulations. Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you. 11H is, and I have it on the printed one, I must have a different board book up here, but approval of online, okay, thank you. Consider approval of online learning coordinator contract, Mr. Zesker.
Yeah, Christine's not here tonight, but we want to, we're very excited to have Christine Botham. Most of you guys know who that is. Again, she had taught in our district for a period of time, and we're super excited to have her lead our online learning program under the umbrella of our teaching and learning extraordinaire Tracy Cochran over here. So, yeah. No, we're excited to have Christine help out with this for this piece.
Motion for approval of the online learning coordinator contract. Also move. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And just a comment by me, I happened to see Chris at a social event this weekend, and she's so excited. She's already been in working and meeting with Tracy and some of the people, so we're just super excited. She's excited, and we're all ready to roll. So this is quite an undertaking. So,
just another comment. Just think of the leadership team that we have in place. We have Casey, who's in the back working on that. Just great, our technology leader, and then of course Tracy at our curriculum. Now we put Chris into that leadership role, and it's going to be a terrific game. And then in addition, 5 instructors. So we're excited about that moving forward.
Awesome. Anything further? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. 11I, consider approval to change July 2021 school board meeting to July 19th, 2021.
That's mine, sorry. I've got, I put a vacation in there at the end of the month. It's our family reunion that we have on that side each time. So I'm hoping we can go ahead and move that to the 19th if that works out for you. July 26th was the original date, and then that would move to the 19th.
And that's why we put it out early in the board book for board members, so you could research your calendars, et cetera, and do that. So let's have a motion for approval to change July 21 school board meeting to July 19th, 2021. I don't, somebody make, anyone wish to make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Steves. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Discussion. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. All right, zipping right along here to item 12, other items of information, school board members. Dr. Robichaud.
Mr. Chair, I do have a comment. I've been contacted by the Federal Reserve regarding the possibility of hosting a community conversation with Justice Alan Page and President Neal. Can't pronounce his last name, sorry about that. Anyway, regarding the proposed amendment to the Constitution, and I said I would bring it up to this board to see if you'd be interested in pursuing that. I would also encourage us to contact Medford and Owatonna and Northfield to see if they would be interested. I know, Ms. Treadway, you've attended a community conversation, and if you're not aware of it, these two individuals have proposed an amendment to the Constitution regarding the quality of education for all children rather than an adequate education. And I think it'd be very interesting to hear these two authors regarding what the proposal would be for that amendment. My guess is that it will eventually come for a vote. So I think for us to be informed voters would be better than to go on rumors and gossip. So I'm finding out, and I will talk to the chamber about doing some work with that in addition. So wondering what the board's feeling is here about hosting that kind of a community conversation regarding this proposed amendment. And both, I'm understanding that both Justice Page and President Neil Karstaten would be here in person to present this. So. be sometime in September after school starts. I think it would be good if we could engage some students in this process as well.
I certainly would be an attendee. I certainly would like to participate in that as well. I don't know about other board members here, but if somehow we're going to facilitate connecting with, would you reach out to Medford?
I will do
Oh, you
that,
would?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, yeah, I think, or we can individually email you or whatever to reply to this or whatever. I mean, with Chad and Courtney.
I've talked to Chad about it, and he's
Okay.
supportive of it.
Yes.
so.
Okay, so let's go that route.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I would say lock it in and
All right.
do that in,
I
so
will.
as far as
Thank
I'm
you.
concerned, so, good. Okay, any other board members?
I attended the Minnesota Equity Partnership Summer Institute on June 16th, and it was highly enlightening. Both keynote and the breakout sessions Todd and I have attended in the past. But the board members may be interested in contacting Sean Peck and Mr. Robles. Is that the psychology teacher at the high school? Is that his
Robley.
last? Okay, Robley.
Yep.
Who presented on equitable grading practices, and they did an excellent job. And I would suggest that if any of you are interested in how some of the grading has changed somewhat at the high school, you reach out to them. And then I also attended another session by two of the English language mainstream coaches at high school. And I was absolutely in awe of the kind of work they're doing. Not only are they improving education for mainstreamed EL students, but in general, they are upping the game on the quality of education and instruction that is being offered to all students in classes. There again, if you're interested in that, I would suggest you reach out for their materials. I have the online materials if any of you just want to look at that. But I was quite proud of those individuals for the way they represented Faribault Public Schools and the amazing work they are doing there.
Any other board members? I'll just take a minute here, and we had the resignations. We also had some resignations and within the board book and the consent agenda, and I just want to acknowledge the work and dedication of Keith Badger and Sam Oak to this district for a number of years as they move on to other areas and careers in their life, and the dedication and effort that they did put in here, so I want to thank them for that. Also, I'm going through the consent agenda. If you look at all the hires we've done for STEAM and all these things, I just want to give a shout out and a thank you to the Human Resources Department. My goodness, I just can't imagine all the resumes and this and coming in and out. It's
She's on vacation this week.
She needed it.
Well, I probably shouldn't have said that.
Did she need to be then? Probably. But no, and to Barb Woodall as well too, just the work that the whole HR person. And then just once again, having the opportunity as a board member to attend the graduation ceremony at Faribault High School. What a great job by Mr. Benty and other principals and Mr. Sesker and it was just a fabulous experience. And then also, I want to steal thunder here, but Ms. Steves and Ms. Treadway and I attended along with Mr. Sesker, attended the graduation at the ALC. And been a long time since I've seen kids have smiles that big, and how much that means to that diploma meant to those kids, and how hard they worked for that, et cetera. It's just a joy to see, and the parents proud, and I'm so glad we offer that program, and really so kids can have another avenue to get that diploma and be successful in life. So again, congratulations to all those kids. So thank you. So with that, it's Mr. Sesker.
So, yeah, I did a few things this past couple weeks. First of all, we started with the ICC, that's our Incident Command Center team meeting that we had to make sure that we are adopting the proper guidelines as set forth by the state. And what was really cool about this is that the ICC team voted to not mandate mask wearing for staff and students. And the very next day, it was like a Christmas party. Everybody was, you could see the smiles. But it was a real big relief. And it was very nice to see that, and all the staff very excited as we move forward with that. And I'm pleased to say that, knock on wood, that we haven't had any cases, so that's been terrific too. So that's been a great committee. I'm hoping to phase that out eventually. We still have a little work to do before the school starts in August, but for the most part, I hope that we are complete with this journey. I also attended the ALC graduation, which was terrific. I go there every year. It's very I guess rewarding when you go see those kids graduate, just as much as we see those kids graduate on the stage at Nolan Gym. And the other thing is, I went down to Winona State University, and I was part of a review panel for the Board of School Administrators. They review all 14 institutes, all universities in the state of Minnesota who are accredited for ed leadership. And so we do a really deep dive into curriculum, what allows students to get into the programs, how the programs graduate students who are going into leadership. Tony Kinkle, who is the executive director at BOSA, Board of School Administrators, was the leader there. Then it was me, Mary Francis, who worked with John on the licensing board a number of years. The board chair at Winona, and Nancy Denzer, was with us. And then also the principal at Medford, Kevin Babcock, was also part of that review panel. And we interview staff at Winona State. What was really cool is that the president and the dean were there to answer questions for an hour. That never happens. Usually we see the president for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then he or she is gone. So they did a really nice job for that. And then BOSA actually makes the recommendation to whether or not to continue that program, literally. And that recommendation goes to the Board of School Administrators, and then that university either is able to continue that program after they get 1 year of leniency, then they have to drop it. So it's a pretty serious process that they go through. I do believe that the University of Minnesota Duluth was one of those schools that had to drop the program. And they look at finances, how many students are in it, and what's revenue versus expenditures going on. So it was really cool for me as a professional going in there to see actually those qualifications and some of those barriers that are also holding a lot of our leaders back. So it was a long 2 days, but we got through it, so it was good. And that's all I have.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 13, the dates to remember. July 19th, 2021, 7:30 a.m. finance meeting. And then July 19th, 2021, as per action tonight, 5:30 p.m. and our regular board meeting. There is no work session for the board in the month of July. With that, item 14 is adjournment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.